Hello and welcome to lesson 2.2. We're going to be talking about the 4 macromolecules today. All right, our lesson objectives include identifying the elements that make up each molecule. You're going to want to be able to list the monomers and polymers of each molecule. We want to describe the function of each molecule. Those are the big things we want to take away from learning about the macromolecules. All right, so if you've ever looked at a nutrition label before, you're going to recognize some of these terms, okay? You've more than likely seen carbohydrates, okay, lipids, which are actually on the label as fat, and then we've got proteins, okay? Now, nucleic acids aren't on there, and we'll talk about that reason why later. All right, we're going to talk about carbohydrates first. Okay, the elements that make up carbohydrates are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. If you know that C stands for carbon, H stands for hydrogen, and O stands for oxygen, you can simply just write CHO in your notes. Okay? If you're unsure of what C, H, and O stand for, go ahead and write those out. All right, we've got monomers. Our monomer of a carbohydrate is a monosaccharide. Again, we've got mono means one. Saccharide actually refers to it being a sugar, okay? Carbohydrates are essentially sugars. The function of carbohydrates is energy and structure. It's our primary source of energy. Our body's first choice when it needs that boost of energy, it's going to look for those carbohydrates to burn. Okay, it also helps provide structure to our cell membranes. All right, some examples: sugar. So regular table sugar. Let's see, starch. You guys should be familiar with that one. And fiber. All of those are very common things that are all examples of carbohydrates. It is important to note, so make sure you write on there somewhere if there's not a spot for it, that carbs typically end in OSE, OS. That is not always the case because fiber, starch, those don't end in OSE, but we've got glucose, sucrose, maltose, lactose, galactose, okay, a lot of different ones that end in OSE. So if you hear a word and it ends in that OS, more than likely it's going to be a sugar. All right. And the different types of carbohydrates, like I just named, glucose, lactose, all those, really depend on how many monomers they have, okay? That helps separate some of the different types of carbohydrates. Monosaccharide, mono is one. Those are going to be our simple sugars like glucose, okay? Disaccharide, di means two, so we got two sugars there. Those are going to be things like sucrose, which is a glucose and fructose added together to become a disaccharide. Polysaccharides are many sugars. Those are the big molecules like starch, glycogen, cellulose, chitin, fiber, okay? Let's see. So looking at this picture, we want to know what type of carbohydrate this is. So I have essentially one ring, which is a carbohydrate here, and one ring, which is a carbohydrate here. So that is going to be a disaccharide. This is actually sucrose, which is your regular table sugar. All right, foods that are high in carbohydrates: candy, fruit, pasta, bread, also veggies. Going into lipids, okay, elements that make up lipids are, again, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. CHO, right? CHO. So much easier if you know what that means. Okay, our types include triglycerides, phospholipids, steroids. The common parts include the glycerol and fatty acids. We typically, lipids don't have the traditional monomer, okay? But to kind of help break things down, we will often refer to the monomer as being glycerol and fatty acids, okay? Because those are the smaller parts that make up the big lipids. Lipids' function include energy storage. It forms our cell membrane, and it also helps with insulation of heat, okay? So energy storage, it's our body's second choice for energy. If you have burned through all of your carb energy, your body will start to burn your fat for that energy, okay? The phospholipids actually make our cell membrane that hold our cells together, so that is super important. And then body insulation. If you ever notice animals that live in really cold conditions, like polar bears or whales that dive deep into the cold water, or seals and walruses, animals like that tend to have a lot of blubber, which is fat, which helps with insulation and keeping them warm. Okay. So our examples of lipids include fats, oils, waxes, and steroids. Now, it is also important to note, so you might want to jot this down, all lipids are hydrophobic. Hydro refers to water, phobic refers to a fear. So it essentially translates to water fearing. They don't like water. That is why we say oil and water don't mix. If you ever put oil and water in a glass together, that oil is going to sit on top, that water is going to be on the bottom. They do not mix together. All right, so make sure you also know that lipids are commonly called fats, okay? And it is a triglyceride that makes up the fats. So we've got one glycerol molecule and then 3 fatty acid chains. Okay, again, it's for energy storage. It actually gives us more energy than carbs, but our body likes to burn those carbs first. Okay, fats can be saturated, which means that they're solid at room temperature, like butter, or unsaturated, which means they are liquid at room temperature, like oil. Okay, phospholipids, we'll get a little bit more into this when we start talking about the cell and cell membrane. The phospholipids form the cell membrane of our cells. It is a glycerol and a phosphate group and 2 fatty acids. Okay, we have our 2 parts, which are the head, which is hydrophilic. Okay, hydro again means water. Philic refers to like an attraction to. So the hydrophilic head, which is not the lipid part, it's the phosphate part, those guys like water. Okay, our tail is hydrophobic. So inside here, this is where our lipids are, and they do not like water. Okay. Foods high in lipids, we've got oils like vegetable oil, olive oil, coconut oil, and then fats like butter, cheese, meats such as bacon, avocado, nuts. Okay. Proteins. Okay, we've had cho, we're adding chon, our N. So our proteins have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Okay, our monomers are amino acids. The function, a little bit of everything. We are more commonly aware of protein function when it comes to muscles, okay, and our like building muscles. We know we need to eat protein to be nice and strong, but it also helps in cell transport, and enzymes are a type of protein that are super important that we are going to actually spend some time learning about. They help cellular reactions occur in our bodies, okay. Our examples include insulin, keratin, melanin. A lot of our proteins end in N. Okay. There are 20 common amino acids that link together to form proteins. So amino acids are our monomer, okay, and then our polymer we like to call a polypeptide. Okay, this polypeptide chain. Okay, so here are all of our little monomers. Oh, didn't mean to click that. Here are all of our little monomers, okay, that are bonding together. So each of these 20 amino acids bond together. They form this polypeptide chain. Once this forms, okay, it starts to fold onto itself and it creates a specific shape based on the order of those amino acids. Some foods we're going to see high in protein include meat, nuts, eggs, and beans. All right, getting into nucleic acids. So we've had cho, chon. Now we're adding chomp. Not chomp as in nom, 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 but chomp with an N. Okay, so that P on there stands for phosphorus. So now we've got carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Our monomer of nucleic acids is nucleotides. You better remember that. It sounds very similar. So if you see the word nucleotide, you should associate that with nucleic acids, okay? Function is storing and transmitting instructions to make proteins. Essentially, it holds our DNA, which are instructions for doing everything in our body, okay? Our examples include DNA and RNA. The monomer of nucleic acids, again, are nucleotides. There are 3 parts that make up a nucleotide. You've got a sugar, okay, a phosphate head, a phosphate group, which is similar to the phosphate head on our lipid, or phospholipid, okay, and then our nitrogen base. There are 4 nitrogen bases. We'll get more into that when we start talking about genetics. All right, DNA versus RNA. DNA is double-stranded, RNA is single-stranded. Ooh, excuse me so much. All right, food and nucleic acids. Remember when we were looking at the nutrition label and we noticed that nucleic acids weren't listed on there, but we said we eat our macromolecules? Well, that's because all living things have DNA and or RNA, and therefore all food contains nucleic acids. That's why it's not included on nutrition labels, because if it's a living thing, it has to have DNA and RNA. So there's no point in really listing it. It's in there. And I know it sounds weird to think about it, but we use other organisms' DNA. We break it down back into the basic molecules and reuse them. Okay. All right, our lesson summary. We got 4 categories of macromolecules. We've got carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids. Okay, carbs are for quick energy and are known as sugars. Lipids are stored energy and are known as fats. Proteins are for muscle growth and cell function, and then nucleic acids contain our genetic information. All right, that wraps up our lesson 2.2. I know that was a little bit longer, and I apologize. I'll try to keep these shorter, but that was a lot of information we had to cover there. And we're going to be spending a couple days working on this, so don't panic. We'll have some time to kind of get familiar with this. Make sure you head back to Canvas, work on your 2.2 must-do, which is a Venn diagram that you're sorting out, okay? And that wraps us up. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will see you next time.